I wanted to give you a brief little follow-up to the latest batch of Epstein files that dropped. Over 3 million files came out, and it's been quite a few days now of people coming through them and finding tons and tons of alarming things, new allegations, new names, a ton of new information. I highly recommend you check out CoffeeZilla's 2 latest videos covering this new Epstein file drop. I think he does a great job at cutting through the bullshit and delivering the clearest coverage and highlighting some of the most important takeaways from all of this new information. This is a huge deal, and don't let any of the NPCs on Twitter convince you otherwise or try and minimize the importance of this. And crazy enough, I know it's not just these faceless homunculi on Twitter that have this administration's cock buried deep into their throat that's trying to convince you to just let this all go. The administration itself is doing that as well, which is the main thing I want to talk about here. Since this release, the official narrative from the administration is they've finally complied with the law and release these files, and now we can all just move on. Which is crazy because there are still no arrests and seemingly no investigations either, despite all of this overwhelming evidence that now the public has access to and can see some really fucking terrible things in. Raping children, trafficking children, possible cannibalism, torture, murder, all of this now just openly in the public. Of course, with tons of redactions to protect the perpetrators, naturally, which, of course, violates the law that they're right now gloating about following, by the way. All of this is now out there in the public, and yet still, no investigations, and the administration is proudly just saying, time to move on. Before showing you some clips here, I want to do a little experiment here with you to try and activate a few neurons, God forbid. Let me dust off your brain here for a moment. Let's say that you have drank the Kool-Aid to such an extreme degree that you believe all of these Epstein files are a bunch of hooey when it comes to the Republicans that are named in there, like Howard Lutnick or Donald Trump. Let's say that you think that all of those are make-believe, there's nothing in there that holds any water, it's a fucking, wild goose chase, it's all fake. But you believe that all of the information in regards to Democrats in there, like Bill Clinton, is legitimate, and Bill Gates. All of that's real, but all the stuff on the Republicans is fake. Let's play ball with that. Let's say you're right. Why are the Republicans that are in charge right now in this administration not pursuing an investigation on the Democrats in these Epstein files? Let's go into a little bit of chess theory here. Everything about Donald Trump and the Epstein files is totally innocent. He's been absolved of all wrongdoing like he says he is, and like a lot of other people are trying to regurgitate, despite the numerous times his name appears. Let's say he's not compromised by Israel like the FBI was investigating. Let's say all of this is wrong, but all the Democrats that are named in there are actually guilty. Those are the actual evil perpetrators and the real culprits. Why the fuck aren't we arresting the Democrats, or at the very least, investigating all of this information in the Epstein files? Ask yourself that question. Let's use someone easy, Bill Clinton. I think most sane people on the planet, after combing through the Epstein files and seeing all of these allegations and the pictures and everything with Bill Clinton, can agree there's enough here to at least start poking around and see what's going on with Bill Clinton's relationship to Epstein and everything that happened on the Epstein Island, right? Well, why the fuck is Trump defending him so adamantly right now? He just put out a statement like, man, I hate that people are shooting spitballs at Bill Clinton. I like that guy. I love that guy, actually. For a second there, I thought he was going to request a group hug in the shower with Bill Clinton at the very end of that fucking segment. Like, all of a sudden, he's Bill Clinton's best friend suckling on his titties. Like, what? Where's this coming from? Like, only a couple days ago, he was like, yeah, Bill Clinton's name's all over that. That backfired, didn't it? And now he's like, oh, man, Bill Clinton's, he's like the best of us. That guy's awesome. This is craziness. Actual craziness. Now, I know that there's, like, some probes into some things in regards to the Epstein files and people like Bill Clinton, like, related to it. But nothing's going to come from it. Nothing has come from this shit ever. Across multiple administrations, nothing has come from it, so I have no expectation that there's going to be any justice, especially when the fucking President Trump is still talking about, like, let's move on and it's not important. Or Perjury Patel, like, hey, we comply with the law, Epstein files are out there, we're done here, time to wash our hands of it. Or Todd Blanche going and saying, it's not a crime to party with Epstein. It's very hard to have any level of faith that there's going to be any repercussions to all of these evil monsters. Now, I know I've been sitting here shitting and spitting, got a little off track. To bring it back to the initial thought experiment I wanted to plant into your noodle. If you believe all Republicans in these Epstein files are innocent, but all Democrats are not, ask yourself, why are the Republicans that are in charge right now not actually investigating or holding any of these Democrats accountable and punishing them, pursuing charges, or anything of the sort? Why does it seem like the actual narrative is the Epstein files are out there, we're done here? Even though, by the way, the official stance only a few months ago is that the Epstein files aren't real, it's a Democrat hoax, they don't exist, that kind of thing. After, of course, Pam Bondi said they were on her desk. After, of course, they had actually given the Epstein files phase 1 to some fucking right-wing influencers who have been hush-hush crickets ever since. Anyway, if the Democrats in the Epstein files are guilty, why are they not being investigated? Let me offer you a little game theory here. It's because the Republicans in the Epstein files aren't actually innocent. No one in the Epstein files is innocent when it comes to a lot of the evidence we now have at our fingertips. There's a lot of real actionable stuff in there, at least I think so. Now, of course, a lot of it is unsubstantiated. I get that. Not everyone in there is probably guilty of shit. Like, I know Russell Wilson was in there about like a plane, like trying to buy a plane. I get that. But there's a lot of substantial evidence on a lot of very powerful people, like a Howard Lutnick. And so, if this administration did actually pursue charges against the Democrats that are named in the Epstein files, then that puts them at risk of being implicated as well if that person starts squealing, if they start letting the fat lady sing. That's why I believe they are not pursuing any kind of real investigation or anything at all for anyone associated with the Epstein files. That's why, apparently, all of these extremely powerful people that are named in there are completely fucking untouchable. They're basically ghosts at this point. If your name is in the Epstein files, you've basically activated God mode in America, where you cannot be touched or punished, it seems. And I think that's also why the previous administration wasn't touching anything in the Epstein files, because again, if they went after the Republicans that were named in the Epstein files, that opens them up to also being implicated there as well. Because clearly, this was more than just one party. Both Republicans and Democrats are named a lot in these Epstein files. So it'd be a fucking disaster for both parties, which is why it's been such like a fucking hot potato that hasn't been touched. That's what I believe. Now anyway, I think any sane person would agree that this is a huge fucking problem, that no one is getting arrested for this. But unfortunately, the powerful politicians that govern us are not sane. So they are to our face spitting on us, telling us to just move on and that it's not important. Here's those words from Donald Trump.
And you tell me something else. No, I think it's really time for the country to get onto something else. Really. You know, now that nothing came out about me, other than there was a conspiracy against me, literally, by Epstein and other people. But I think it's time now for the country to maybe get onto something else.
What would you say to people
like
who feel like they haven't gotten
healthcare,
justice, Mr. President?
something that people care about? Yeah.
Oh, move on to something that people care about. So you don't care about child sex trafficking, the raping of children, the potential cannibalism, the torture, the murder, all of that? That's not something you think American people should care about? That's not the important stuff? Well, what the fuck is? The Trump phone? Which is probably coming out any day now. Supposed to come out in like August of 2025, by the way. Still no expected delivery time on my Trump phone device. Crazy. They're saying maybe March now. Fingers crossed. Any day, no doubt. How can anyone sit there and not be revolted by that statement? Again, if these Epstein files absolved Trump, which I don't see how anyone could mental gymnastic that explanation into reality and truly believe it. But again, even if he is completely squeaky clean here in the Epstein case, everyone else isn't. There's plenty of people that aren't. Why does he want so badly to just move on from this? Why does he want to bury it? He should be like really gung-ho about getting all of them arrested. And in fact, actually, one of his big promises when he was campaigning is that's exactly what he's going to do. But promises made, promises broken. That's the new motto. That is exactly what's been going on. He campaigned about how important the Epstein files were to release and like actually get justice for the victims and punish these heinous, evil people. And then the second he gets into office, he's done everything in his power to not only deny the existence of the Epstein files, calling them a Democrat hoax, but also doing everything he can to prevent them from coming out. And it has just been a complete circus with these. And now that they're here, and people have all of this evidence with so many names and so many bad people on there with a lot of things that I do think would warrant an investigation, he is saying it's not important and that we need to move on. That is actual craziness.
Do you have regrets about how it's been handled?
Look, like any other
hot topic issue. The American public and the world had a great interest in this. And what we did under President Trump's leadership is produce the most transparent DOJ and FBI in history. 3 other administrations had the opportunity to do this, and we produced everything we legally and lawfully could. We worked with our partners in Congress, we followed the statutes and the court orders, and we produced, what, 3 million some pages? So I think we got to the result in the right way. Could we have gotten there faster? I'm not really sure because of numerous court cases, multiple protective orders, multiple court sealings. And so now we've produced everything we can while protecting victims' rights and families.
This fucking dweeb, this insufferable dork. So here's Perjury Patel taking a victory lap here about how they did everything right when it came to the Epstein files, which, by the way, under oath, Kash Patel said that there's no evidence that there were like any, clients, no list. He said plenty of things that have been completely disproven with these Epstein files being released, but he's not facing any perjury charges, and to my understanding, no one's even pursuing it. Super weird how Perjury Patel just gets away with it. But here, he's talking about how they did everything right in the right way, which is not true. They did everything they could to not release these files every step of the way. They're already like 2 months late, basically, close to it. And also, the redactions were supposed to be reserved exclusively for the names of victims. They have not been used for just victims' names. That has been proven beyond a shadow of a doubt. That is a violation of the law that had been signed into place when it came to the handling of the Epstein files. And pretty much everything he says there is just a lie. That is what Perjury Patel does, just lie. But the sentiment he's trying to express is now that they have the 3 million some files out there, they've done what they were required to do, and now we need to move on. There is nothing in regards to like an investigation or punishment to the people that are named in these files with tons of evidence and tons of really very, very disturbing things, pictures, videos, emails, all of this stuff, and all of the people in them don't seem to be looking at any possible punishment or anything at all. It doesn't seem like there's any level of justice coming to the victims here of the Jeffrey Epstein operation and all of the clients.
Is there any chance that any of these individuals who partied with Epstein and engaged in, relations with minors will be prosecuted? Any chance?
I'll never say no, and we will always investigate any evidence of misconduct. But as you know, it is not a crime to party with Mr. Epstein, and so as horrible as it's not a crime to email with Mr. Epstein. And some of these men may have done horrible things, and if we have evidence that allows us to prosecute them, you better believe we will. But it's also the kind of thing that the American people need to understand that. It isn't a crime to party with Mr. Epstein. It isn't a crime to have
Didn't look like that's all that was going on some of those photos. I mean, if the photos could speak, some of them look pretty bad.
That's right. And unfortunately, photos can't speak. And so we need witnesses and we need
Are there
evidence
videotapes that you all have? Or?
To answer that question, yeah, there's videotapes that they all have. In fact, Pam Bondi said that there's like thousands of videos with children in them. Pam Bondi seems like totally fine just letting this whole Epstein thing just kind of fall to the back rooms, by the way. Anyway, though, here's Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche just outright saying with his whole chest, it's not a crime to party with Jeffrey Epstein. And he's being very open and honest here about how little he's actually caring about it. He's making it seem like, oh, maybe there's a chance for an investigation, but he's being very blunt that it's probably not coming. There's probably not going to be an investigation. He's even saying, yeah, unfortunately, pictures can't speak. So all those horrible pictures and all of that evidence in there, probably not going to lead to an investigation. Everyone's going to get away with it. Oh, shucks. But it's not a crime to party with Jeffrey Epstein. You know, the man behind the biggest child sex trafficking operation in this country's history. What a strong message to be sending, Todd. It's all just so blatantly in your face. They treat you like you are a mindless sheep. And plenty of people are proving them correct here with the shit that they're swallowing here with a smile on their face. Wake the fuck up, samurai. The president has just said that we need to move on from the Epstein files into something that people care about. Let that marinate for a second. Really think about that. Why is he trying to make it seem like the raping of children, the sex trafficking of children, the cannibalism, the torture, the murder is not something you should care about? And this is all perpetrated by potentially the most powerful people in this country. Why is the president and his administration trying so hard to bury this and get people to move on without even trying to investigate or hold anyone accountable that's named in these files? It's just crazy. Anyway, I just had to yap about this a bit after seeing the response here from government officials about it's not important, just move on. I actually couldn't believe my fucking ears. Anyway, that's really about it. So yeah. Wow. Actually, huge wow. A massive batch of Epstein files just dropped in hot, fresh off the battle bus here from the top turnbuckle out of nowhere. Like, I didn't think we'd even see any more with the DOJ putting up that huge stink even recently about like how courts can't force them to release it, this and that. It seemed like this was never going to happen because getting them to comply with the law was like pulling teeth. So they were a month late, but they actually released like millions of Epstein files. And there are huge, disgusting, evil things that have been uncovered in this latest batch of Epstein files. This time around, it's a little different than their previous release where there were hundreds of pages of blacked out redactions and that was basically it. This is what you saw with the Epstein files, except I thought that was going to make the camera go black. You get the idea. It was basically just staring into the fucking void. It was just pitch black because everything was redacted. It was just a lot of nothing. But even amidst that nothing, they were so fucking incompetent that they left in the ability to unredact the files yourself, where people were able to catch them breaking the law, where a lot of the redacted names were not names of victims. They were various other things, and a lot of the redactions were clearly not victims. Sometimes it even seemed like the redactions were there to protect the names of potential clients and perpetrators, which again is a complete violation of the Epstein Files Transparency Act that they were supposed to be following. But again, even with them farting out completely blacked out pages to protect these pedophiles in power, there were still a lot of huge revelations that came from this, such as co-conspirators that for some reason they never pursued. We don't know who they were because their names have been redacted conveniently, but we learned that there were co-conspirators they were investigating, and I guess they just let the leads dry up and then just said, fiddlesticks, they're gone. Now time to pretend they don't exist. Like Kash Patel under oath lying about it. Perjury Patel, by the way, still not punished for it. And speaking of unpunished, you know who else has been unpunished? Every fucking Epstein client, all of these rapists and pedophiles, all of them still just getting away with these unthinkable crimes. No one being handcuffed and thrown in the slammer. Doesn't even seem like they're pursuing any investigations or anything into it. Across 2 administrations now, no fucking arrests outside of Maxwell, who Trump has done everything in his power to ensure she is treated like a queen at a new summer camp that she now resides at. Barely even a fucking prison. This is lunacy of the highest caliber. Now anyway, I know I'm getting kind of sidetracked here with like the previously on Dragon Ball Z with this whole saga. The most recent batch of Epstein files came out a couple hours ago. Millions of files, so people are still combing through them, but what they are finding is alarming. Trump's name, of course, is all over these files. His name appears more in these Epstein files than Green Eggs and Ham appeared in the fucking Green Eggs and Ham Dr. Seuss book. His name is everywhere with numerous allegations about terrible, awful things. Some things we had heard little bits and pieces about from previous Epstein releases, but this one has significantly more, including this FBI report that claims Trump has been compromised by Israel, which anyone who's been paying attention to this administration shouldn't really be surprised at. I don't think anyone heard that and recoiled in their chair going, what? If anyone's followed everything that's been going on in regards to Trump and Israel, it should be no surprise that the FBI believed he was compromised, is compromised as well, most likely. But this is, again, new information that is hitting the public here from official sources in these Epstein files. These are big. Another huge name appearing in here is Bill Gates. So Bill Gates had an exchange with Jeffrey Epstein, and I think it's been known for a long time Bill Gates was associated with Jeffrey Epstein, but this information here is new that talks about how he contracted an STD apparently and had asked Jeffrey Epstein to provide him with antibiotics that he could secretly dose Melinda with. He had contracted it from Russian girls apparently. Another massive name coming in is Elon Musk, who had an email chain with Jeffrey Epstein that was in these files about him trying to plan a visit to Jeffrey Epstein's island, and he seemed to want to find the wildest party, the best time to come through to the island, and he was trying to make plans to go visit the island These new files also expose blatant lies that a lot of really powerful people tried to peddle to get themselves out of hot water in regards to their close connection to Jeffrey Epstein, like Howard Lutnick. Howard Lutnick is Trump's commerce secretary, and he claimed he cut ties with Jeffrey Epstein in 2005, yet in these files we can clearly see he was emailing Epstein in 2012 planning a trip out there, saying, "Hi Jeff, we are landing in St. Thomas early Saturday afternoon and planning to head over to St. Bart on Monday at some point. Where are you located? Does Sunday evening for dinner sound good? I have another couple, Michael and Mary Lehrman, with me on my boat, and each of us has 4 children. 2 16s, 2 14s, a 13, a 12, an 11, and a 7-year-old. Thanks, Howard." What a disgusting freak. He's even listing out the ages of the children that are joining them on their planned trip to Epstein's Island. This is in 2012. That's quite a few years after 2005, Howard. Seems like you told a big-time fib. Howard said that he had visited Epstein's house in 2005, but it culminated with him getting the heebie-jeebies. He called him gross and said that was basically kaput. That was the end of his relationship with Epstein. He washed his hands of him back in 2005, but that clearly wasn't true now, was it, Howard? These emails are from 2012, planning a trip out there and making a very odd mention of a bunch of children and their ages that will be joining you to Epstein's Island. Howard Lutnick is your U.S. Secretary of Commerce under Trump right now. This is your Commerce Secretary. And he is one of many very powerful politicians whom you'll find in these new Epstein files and previous Epstein files as well. These are just a few of many names, new names as well, very powerful people who appear in these files with alleged horrible, horrible things that they have done in connection with Jeffrey Epstein and the island. It is a big, big deal. This is undoubtedly just the tip of the iceberg here. This latest batch was millions of files, so there is still a lot of information out there that hasn't been adequately combed through, and still what we are learning right now is heinous. And I feel like it should be pretty obvious that there needs to be investigations conducted here, and maybe a little bit of fucking justice. Maybe some of these evil fucking demons getting arrested, perhaps. Why are none of these people in these Epstein files even being looked into at all? Why does Kash Patel lie under oath about there not being an Epstein list or clients or like co-conspirators when we now have all this available evidence that confirms there definitely were co-conspirators, there definitely are clients, and there is nothing being done, not in this administration, not the previous administration, to hold any of them accountable or find them. This is a huge deal that nobody should be trying to like minimize the importance of. For some reason, people are trying to pretend as though this is something we should just like brush aside, move on from the whole Epstein fiasco. That is craziness. There are people in the most powerful positions of government right now that are rapists and pedophiles that have got away with unthinkable crimes, and they need to be held accountable. We have so much information here. We have so many names, and we need them to be investigated. We need justice. I don't know why so many people are so okay with being governed by these monsters. It's baffling to me. It actually boggles my fucking mind. This latest batch shows even more evidence, shines even more light on these terrible, terrible things that unfolded here, and the close connections a lot of powerful people had to Epstein and the island. I'll continue to look into the files and see what else turns up from all of this. I'll be, of course, keeping my finger on the pulse of it, and I highly encourage all of you to be paying very close attention to it and the people named in these Epstein files, and the people that try and defend it as well. That is unacceptable. This is indefensible. There's no excuse for it. So anyway, wanted to just give you an update here. That's really about it. So yeah, it's 5 a.m. I got a butt full of poop, but I cannot peel myself away from the computer to go take care of that business. I'm refusing nature's call, and it's not insomnia that's keeping me awake right now. We are in the middle of what I believe to be an actual big development here in the Epstein case. CoffeeZilla just made a video talking about this, as well as giving instructions on how you yourself can get your hands on this latest dump of documents that wasn't supposed to go out yet, but had been accessible to people savvy enough to get their hands on it, and now it's been disseminated. And these are some documents here that I imagine they were probably going to do a little bit more to hide some names and hide certain elements of, because, hooey, boy howdy, I imagine Trump and a lot of the elites are doing this right now. Yeesh. There is some big stuff in here, and I'm not saying that sarcastically this time around. Yes, the vast majority is still like hundreds of pages of completely blacked out, redacted garbage, like it's completely useless, but some of them that they didn't get a chance to go through and just, fucking vanish to the shadow realm has eye-opening stuff that directly contradicts a narrative that the government's been running with for a while.
Here's what that looks like. It's volume 8 of the files, but you can see right now that they've only released 7 data sets. And so myself, the guys at Jmail, and the guys at DropSite, we've been investigating this. I've partnered with them to kind of look at some of these files. And they got access to volume 8 early. You would just type it in the URL. It wasn't like indexable on search, but you could just type in the specific URL and it would just come up. You could download the entire zip file, and that's what we did.
Before anyone tries to cry foul questioning the authenticity of these documents here, this is the actual volume 8. They just made it accessible by pure accident because everyone that seems to be working at the highest level is actually like a thumb-sucking fucking brain-dead moron.
Specifically, I want to draw your attention immediately to the 10 co-conspirators that are mentioned in some of these emails in 2019. Now, this is just alarming stuff because prior to this, remember that all we really had was Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. That's the only people who have ever faced any charges at all. Ghislaine Maxwell, the only one who actually faced consequences, right? But in 2019, apparently there were 10 co-conspirators. Now, the people who were sending this to and from have been blacked out, but at the bottom we see that this is the violent crime section, crimes against human trafficking unit.
That is huge information, especially when you consider clowns like Kash Patel saying that there's no evidence that Jeffrey Epstein was trafficking victims to others or anything like that, making it seem like it was a solo operation and Ghislaine Maxwell, was second fiddle and that's it. And also Maxwell, worth remembering, isn't exactly facing the harshest of punishment. Not real justice there now that she's at a summer camp prison for a little bit petting service animals. So I want to also make a side note. Kash Patel needs to be in jail. Like, he literally needs to be arrested. I don't know why perjury isn't something that's taken seriously anymore. There is irrefutable evidence Kash Patel has lied on record about this case. It's crazy that he just gets to do that with pure immunity. But I won't start shitting and spitting about that too hard right now. The important thing about this piece that CoffeeZilla is highlighting is that we now have information that confirms that authorities were looking into other co-conspirators in this operation. Co-conspirators that clearly they must have dropped the leads at some point. They stopped sniffing around, said not worth pursuing, but at one point they did have other co-conspirators and apparently quite a bit of information on them, as the documents seem to hint at and reveal and talk around. So what the fuck happened, and why are they now pretending that there aren't co-conspirators when we now have hard proof that there was and that they were pursuing for however brief a time?
And additionally, some of the details on this are revealed later because we see this subject line. It says co-conspirators at the top. And it says, blank does not need to head out. We made contact with blank last night in New York City. Blank last night in New York. Contact was made with blank, blank, and blank. By the way, I love how these potential co-conspirators are people who are being blacked out. Like, why? I thought the whole point of this was you couldn't redact people for personal information reasons or for public embarrassment. You could only redact on the basis of it being a victim. And I'm not sure how these people could possibly be victims here.
Epstein Files Transparency Act prohibits redactions, quote, on the basis of embarrassment, reputational harm, or political sensitivity. Has anything been redacted on that basis?
Absolutely, positively not.
Liar, liar, plants for hire. His nose about to grow fucking 5 feet with that big old fib. This is inarguable that they are redacting names of people that aren't victims here. As CoffeeZilla points out, these are co-conspirators. The evidence is overwhelming. There's no wiggle room here, no way to weasel out some kind of explanation for why these would be justifiably censored and blacked out and redacted. These are clearly not victims. This is about the co-conspirators. So there should be no exceptions made. Their names should be revealed here in these documents, but they're not. It's been redacted. Why? Who are they covering up for? And why? This is illegal. You cannot do that. And this is inarguably them redacting names of people that are not victims. It's craziness, and it's so blatant, it's right in your face. Like, the proof is in the pudding, and yet I know people are going to deny it still. It's fucking unhinged. There is no world where you can spin a narrative here where these redactions in these places make sense, because there's no way that what they're talking about right there can possibly be minors or victims. These are co-conspirators that are being protected. That's fucking insanity.
But anyways, you can see that it says attempts were made to blank and Brunel, that's Jean-Luc Brunel, the famous who's now dead. Blank is confirmed to live in New York, was away for the holiday weekend. We did not have a good address, but an attempt was made in New York. Attempts are made to Maxwell today. Blank, you get it. Like, it's all the people they suspected this whole time are redacted, of course. And they say, I do not know about Ohio contacting Wexner. Now, that's a reference to Les Wexner, the former CEO of Victoria's Secret. This is huge. We've long suspected that he was, of course, one of the co-conspirators. And obviously, the fact the FBI suspected it isn't a 100% proof confirmation. But clearly, they were serving grand jury subpoenas. I mean, that must be who they're talking about, one wealthy businessman in Ohio, because later it's confirmed by this whole idea of Ohio contacting Wexner.
Even though most of the names are redacted, it's not all of them. So Wexner's name appears here, as well as Brunel, but as CoffeeZilla mentioned, he's dead. He's already burning in hell right now. But Wexner, this was someone that they grand jury subpoenaed, seemingly, and I don't think I've heard a peep about any kind of consequences or justice being served over there, or any kind of like pursuit on analyzing his connections here to all of this, even though he is here in one of the emails here about being a co-conspirator. What happened there? The well ran dry or something? Like, it turns out he was completely innocent? That seems kind of hard to believe. That'd be a surprising, shocking twist, more so than a fucking Darman video. I don't know about that. That seems a little fishy. And again, why are other names here blacked out? Why are co-conspirators being protected? Why aren't their identities being revealed? Food for thought.
And you can see at the bottom, this is from the FBI New York. When you get a chance, give me an update on the status of the 10 co-conspirators. This is really bad to know that we knew as early as 2019 the right people to target, and yet our FBI, who's had evidence of this the entire time, or leads on it, has declined to prosecute. Right? Because this is what the FBI now tells us. Oh, don't bother. Don't worry about it. That's what they wanted us to believe in July. Fast forward to December, we find out there's 10 guys that they knew about since like 6 years ago. It's insane.
It is insane, because their position has been like, oh, there was nothing actionable in there, so, stop asking us. Just pipe down. We're busy covering shit up. Stop asking questions, has basically been the philosophy. Our hands are tied. There was nothing. It's all a hoax. Actually, no, the files are on Pam Bondi's desk. No, the files don't exist. It's all a hoax. Wait, actually, here's a ton of fucking files. Nothing's actionable, though. And according to Kash Patel, it was just Jeffrey Epstein. Nobody else. Why? It doesn't go deeper than that. That's it. Case closed. It's a fucking mess. It's a complete circus. And now that we have this kind of information out there, it's even more sickening to know that they are just blatantly protecting these pedophiles, these evil, evil people that engaged in unthinkably heinous actions. They are still getting away with it. And they know, and have known since 2019 apparently, that there are others out there, still at large, and are just not doing anything about it, and would instead rather lie, saying, oh, there's nothing actionable or anything. Yeah, there was really nothing in there at all. In fact, it was all make-believe. In fact, Jeffrey Epstein was never real in the first place. Jeffrey Epstein was the friends made along the way. What are you guys talking about? It's so absurd. It is downright diabolical. The corruption is so blatant, it is right in your face. And even when we are getting drip-fed the tiniest tiddlywinks of information about this case that have been heavily redacted, mind you, we are still seeing just how depraved this is. There is so much evidence that they can't even sweep it all under the rug. We are still finding just how bad this is. Now just imagine what they're keeping from you and covering up and what they've already probably burned and fucking snapped out of existence. And imagine if they actually did follow the rules here and only redact victim information. Just imagine how many people we could point to as blatantly corrupt and needing to be thrown in jail. For the last 6 years, having this kind of information and not acting on it, and to this day, having so many people in the highest levels of government denying its existence and trying to pretend that it's all fucking phony baloney, make-believe, dirty barnacles, horseradish, it's a hoax, it's not real, that kind of thing. Can you imagine if this information did actually properly release with only victims' information redacted?
Even over here, we see that in one of the lawsuits, I believe this is with Maxwell, the government actually wanted to refer to people at trial as co-conspirators of the defendant, aka Maxwell, for the purposes of a rule. And then they say Jeffrey Epstein, and then there are 2 names listed there who are going to be listed as co-conspirators. Again, who are those people? We were told that the only co-conspirator now is Maxwell, and if you don't believe that, you're crazy, you're a conspiracy theorist. But back in 2020, this was an idea not just promulgated by wackos, it was promulgated by who? The FBI themselves, the Department of Justice. Look at this. Co-conspirator question transcript. This is from USA NYS. They say, question, when Jeffrey Epstein died, a lot of people asked, who's next? Is the government going to hold people who are accused of helping him recruit these girls? Are they going to hold them accountable? And then the answer is, well, I'll note that the original charges against Jeffrey Epstein contained a conspiracy charge, and we allege that there were conspirators involved. Jeffrey Epstein couldn't have done what he did without the assistance of others. And I can assure you that our investigation is moving forward, except I guess not.
Yeah, that investigation hit a brick wall. That investigation went off the tracks and fell into a fucking nitroglycerin facility and just blew up, because that shit has not been pursued clearly. As CoffeeZilla mentions, this idea of there being more than just Epstein and Maxwell, the highest level of authority has been saying, you're crazy if you believe that, you are falling for, nonsense fairy tale garbage. But even the FBI years ago was saying the same things internally here. And even agreeing that it couldn't have been done alone. They were even moving to call other people associated with this co-conspirators. Information redacted on those names there. But they knew certain individuals to target for this that they were going to be looking into with the investigation and assuring them that the investigation is moving forward on these co-conspirators, and then it doesn't. Why did it magically stop? What happened? What changed? And why, if all of this information is still at the government's fingertips, do they continue to lie and pretend as though it doesn't exist and that there's nothing here at all that the public didn't already know? They've already given out justice by sending Maxwell to a summer camp. That's all they can do. That's the only power they can muster here.
What's even more concerning is our president also seems concerned with the wrong people.
The victims were protesting that too many of them were redacted.
I know there are a lot of people that are angry about all of the pictures of other people, but I think it's terrible. Look, I like Bill Clinton. I've always gotten along with Bill Clinton. I've been nice to him. He's been nice to me. We've always gotten along. Respect him. I hate to see photos come out of him, but this is what the Democrats, mostly Democrats, and a couple of bad Republicans are asking for. So they're giving their photos of me, too. Everybody was friendly with this guy. I think it's a terrible thing. I think Bill Clinton's a big boy. He can handle it. But you probably have pictures being exposed of other people that innocently met Jeffrey Epstein years ago, many years ago.
What an interesting perspective. That is a fascinating thing for him to harp on so much about, well, we got to think about all the innocent people that met with Jeffrey Epstein. That's what we should be focusing on, and how damaging and how traumatizing this must be for them, those innocent people that hung out with Jeffrey Epstein, all the lawyers and bankers and all of them. Heart breaks for them. Bill Clinton, I can't believe he got wrapped up in this. Love that guy. This is a crazy set of circumstances. He's a big boy, though. Side note, Bill Clinton apparently just put out a statement this afternoon saying release the entirety of the files. So Bill Clinton's like, just do it, pussy. That was a crazy plot twist I certainly didn't expect, because I can't imagine a world where Bill Clinton isn't also wrapped up in this shit. I think that guy is beyond guilty. I bet he had a whole fucking lodge named after him on Epstein's Island. Like, I find it hard to believe that somehow he'd walk out of this squeaky clean. Sounds like mutually assured destruction here, and Bill Clinton's just throwing his meat on the table, challenging him to do so, and I guess we'll see how it all shakes out from there. The thing is that CoffeeZilla is pointing out, Trump's focus is more about, like, there's innocent people here. We have to keep in mind, think of the innocent multi-millionaire and billionaires that didn't know Jeffrey Epstein for all the bad stuff. They just knew him for cracking jokes and stuff, and, you know, just being a guy, just being one of the dudes. Like, why is that what you're focusing on? Why wouldn't you instead be focusing on trying to catch all of the people that have just completely been swept under the rug? Why would that not be the focus? Why instead would you be pretending none of this is real, it's all a hoax? That's very peculiar. I think that's pretty concerning. And when you do have an opportunity to release the files, why are they so heavily redacted with hundreds and hundreds of pages completely blacked out? That looks very guilty. That looks like a really big admission of guilt.
Now, I'll be honest, he gets off track from here, but the point he was making is that those poor, innocent, bankers who were meeting with Epstein, the poor lawyers who were meeting with Epstein, like all of Epstein's friends are just caught up in this unfortunate thing. And it's just such a reversal of what previously the DOJ and FBI believed. In fact, they believed it so much that they got a federal search warrant for the SDNY, and they got it, and part of the seizable data, part of the stuff that they commanded them to seize as part of the search warrant, and part of it says evidence concerning the identity or location of co-conspirators of Jeffrey Epstein, including blank and Ghislaine Maxwell. So again, who is blank? Well, they keep redacting the names of these co-conspirators, uncharged, remember, and now they're saying we have no evidence to charge anybody. Clearly, they had evidence for a search warrant, and it's just completely ridiculous that some of this stuff is redacted and that we're viewing the rich and powerful people who are mentioned as the victims here.
Once again, just further evidence that they are indeed scrubbing the name of co-conspirators. These are not victims or minors that they are taking the names out of here. Thus, they are breaking the rules of how this is supposed to go. It is blatant, this cover-up. There is no world where that is somehow a victim there, yet their name has been redacted. Why? Why are they hiding the co-conspirators' identities? It's fucking outrageous. And people should be very mad about this. But I have no doubt, again, it's 5 a.m. right now, so I haven't seen like the full response to all of this now being out there, but I know there's going to be people that are butt-chugging the Kool-Aid to such an unbelievable degree that the delusion has fully taken hold that they're going to go through these mental gymnastics to explain why, actually, there's nothing fishy going on here. This is totally normal. They did everything by the book, and you're making a mountain out of a molehill. Clearly the most transparent administration in American history at work here, obviously. Which just, again, you have so much evidence to prove that this is not by the book here. This is indeed a co-conspirator's name and many other examples of co-conspirators' names being redacted. Not victims, not minors. Unless they're trying to say that these names here are victims, these people that are potentially co-conspirators of Epstein, they're also victims. And in that case, you need to be institutionalized ASAP if that's what you think. That is a fucking crazy take. But I guess it's not the most outrageous thing to picture someone believing when you have someone like Trump who continues to just drive that point home, where it seems like he's not even really focused on the actual victims of Epstein and all of his clients. He's instead more focused on like, oh, the innocent guys, we used to, just go watch the ball game together with Jeffrey Epstein. They had no idea, and my heart breaks for them. Oh, Bill Clinton playing a song on my world's smallest violin. Like, he's just constantly bringing up, like, oh, so many innocent people. They're getting wrapped up in all this Epstein hoopla. I can't believe we're still talking about it. You're a bad person if you're talking about it, which is something he did say, by the way, not too long ago. I highly recommend you go check out the rest of CoffeeZilla's video. He also gives you the tutorial on how you can get your hands on these files as well to check them all for yourself. Now, after combing through them, there were some other big eyebrow-raising moments. One of them, CoffeeZilla also tweeted out. This is from a U.S. attorney who wrote in 2020, Donald Trump traveled on Epstein's private jet many more times than previously has been reported or that we were aware, including during the period we would expect to charge in a Maxwell case. And then it concludes with, on 2 other flights, 2 of the passengers respectively were women who would be possible witnesses in a Maxwell case. We've just finished reviewing the full records, more than 100 pages of very small script, and didn't want any of this to be a surprise down the road. I noticed Trump's name in quite a few documents in this most recent volume. This has been one that is obviously pretty interesting because it's talking about his frequent flyer miles that he was accumulating with old Epstein Airlines, about how he had flown on the airlines far more than they had thought at the time. Now, whether that's before or after all the flight logs, which does show Trump flying on the planes quite a bit, I don't know. Maybe there's more that weren't on the flight logs. I'm not sure. Again, all of this is still brand new. And I guess as more gets combed through, we'll get more and more information. But like I said, I have been glued to this for hours now. And I really just wanted to yap about it because there is some crazy shit in here. This is finally, for the first time in a long time, big new information in regards to this case and people involved in it, and exposing a blatant cover-up of very important information from these files. Now, it's very late in the evening and all of this is still very fresh. I have no doubt there will be a lot more that comes from this, so I'm just going to try and keep my finger on the pulse of it. I already have no doubt there will be a large number of people that'll plug their ears to it and downplay the significance. I already saw a crazy tweet from some psychopath named Mila. I have no idea who this troglodyte is, but they are now already singing a different tune about why does anyone care about the Epstein files, which is something that was previously tried. Now, in the wake of all of this, it's being dusted off to try again. I truly hope there won't come a time where people start to say that this isn't a big deal, that this isn't something people should care about. This is a massive deal and everyone should care about this because it implicates the people that control your life. The people in the highest level of power in this country that are actively making decisions on your life and how everything unfolds in this country. And if the people that are in these positions are these evil pedophiles that have been getting away with these crimes, then there's a huge problem there. They need to be held accountable and face justice. You shouldn't want to be ruled and controlled by people that were Epstein clients. Like, I don't know how insane people have become recently, where now they are with a straight face trying to say that Epstein isn't something you should care about. Get over it. That blows my mind. Mila Joy, I suppose, gets her joy from the suffering of children and does so with a big smile on her face. She doesn't care that children were being trafficked and raped by potentially the most powerful people in this country. She doesn't care. She doesn't want them unmasked or thrown in jail. She couldn't care less about that. That's pretty fucking unhinged, Mila. All I can do is cross my fingers and hope and pray that there's not a ton of people with a poisoned, smooth brain like she has. I am hoping there's sensible people out there that are seeing all of this unfold in real time and finally having that come to Jesus moment, that eureka moment of, wow, there's something very, very bad afoot here. But anyway, I'll stop yapping about it for now. I guess we'll see what else comes from Volume 8 here of the Epstein files. Huge hats off to everyone that played a role in helping preserve that initial dump of these files, because I have a sneaking suspicion when these are officially released, when they pop up again, they might not be in the same state. I'm thinking there might be further redactions to them. It's just a hunch. I guess we'll see. Anyway, that's really about it. See ya. Alright, man. This new tactic that they're pulling out for the Epstein files, that they're really digging in deep in the John Madden playbook for, is unbelievably ridiculous, even by the standards the circus has already set. This is like if I pissed on your head, but didn't even try and call it rain. I just called it piss. I just say, hey, Buster, I'm urinating on you. And you're just supposed to, like, thank me for it. Last night, there was a big bombshell breaking. All Epstein files released. Pam Bondi announces DOJ has released all Epstein files under the Epstein Files Transparency Act, including justified redactions and a list of high-profile names appearing in these documents. When I saw that fresh little nugget drop there, I actually thought that there was a huge Epstein file dump where they actually did unredact everything. Maybe Pam Bondi getting biblically smacked down at that hearing the other day and embarrassing herself actually did lead to these files coming out, the remainder of them. But it turns out that's just a fucking lie. That's just a big-time, full-blown fib. And of course, it was a speed run to Community Note it as people went to check, only to learn there are no new files. What's being referred to here are the same files that came out a few weeks ago, the 3.5 million files from a couple weeks ago. And now the new thing here is, I guess after Pam Bondi got fucking farmed on Rust by anyone with even a single semblance of a brain at that hearing, she huffed and puffed and then farted out a giant list of names from anyone that was even mentioned anywhere, which includes people like Janis Joplin, who died when Epstein was 17. So this has naturally been called out by a lot of people saying, to have Janis Joplin, who died when Epstein was 17, in the same list as Larry Nassar, who went to prison for the sexual abuse of hundreds of young women and child pornography with no clarification of how either was mentioned in the files is absurd, which it is. It's done on purpose with the sole intent of confusing and muddying everything here. They combined the actual, real, evil child sex trafficking clients with just random people's names who appeared in emails like Janis Joplin. This is ridiculous, and it's just blatantly corrupt right in your face. There is no new files here. That is just a lie. Yet for some reason, it's being peddled by tons of people as if it's real. I guess they all got the call, so Alex Jones here preaching about how Pam Bondi just unleashed the full Epstein files. She dropped her trousers and took a shit on this whole narrative that the Epstein files implicate anyone in this administration. In fact, it backfired bigly on the left, on powerful Dems like Bill Clinton. And others busted while fake smears against Trump are bullshit. Vindication for Trump. It's crazy how Alex Jones, for years, was talking about this elite pedophile ring that was raping and torturing and killing children, and now he is finally proven beyond a shadow of a doubt to be right. He was completely correct on that, and now he has to pussyfoot around the subject, just tiptoeing, walking on eggshells because some of his friends are in there. Dude went from secretly filming Bohemian Grove to being best buddies with its members. So now, we all know that this is correct. Alex Jones could have taken a victory lap on this shit, but instead he's been preoccupied with 6'7" Labubu and whatever other dog shit that is, and anytime he mentions the Epstein files, he has to do so with Trump's cock in his throat about it. He only focuses on those easy, low-hanging fruit of the Epstein files like Bill Clinton. Alex Jones explores the Epstein files like this, with his hands over his eyes, really scared, making sure to put on the blinders so he could block out all of his friends' names, so he can laser focus on easy shit like Bill Clinton, who everybody knows is guilty in all of this. Real groundbreaking stuff, goober. It's incredible what a paid shill this guy is. And I just saw he's doing like a press tour about how all of this is the result of Trump, by the way. He went in there and said, you gotta release this now. It's time we fucking release everything unredacted. No more, softball in it. As if Trump was the reason this happened, even after, for a whole year, Trump has been saying it's a hoax, it's not real, move on, move on, move on. We gotta stop caring about this Epstein stuff. Does anyone still care about this? No one in America cares about this. Yeah, Alex, I'm sure Trump is the one that went in there and really strong-armed the release of anything. And again, Alex Jones is saying all the files are released now. That is just provably false. That is not true. There are no new files that Pam Bondi just released, Alex. It should be obvious to anyone paying attention, or even just a smidgen of attention. You don't even have to, have your eyes glued to it or anything. Even just glancing should be pretty clear, painting an obvious picture that the powers that be are using Alex Jones as a very convenient mouthpiece to regurgitate their shit and defend them, and do a lot of sweeping for them. We are in an era where you have this information at your fingertips, and they are telling you, disregard what your eyes can see and listen to us and nothing else. It's so fucking scary, because people are willingly doing it. You can check yourself to see if there are new files that dropped, and it only takes a couple of seconds to get the real answer. No new files have dropped. You can find the truth yourself, and it takes seconds. And they know that, so they're relying on you just being too lazy and too blind and too much of a sheep, so they can just feed you things and have you believe them without bothering to check. So they can just lie and say that Pam Bondi just unleashed the nuke on Epstein. All of it's right there, and it's only Democrats. Look at that. Backfired bigly. And you won't bother to check it yourself. It's craziness, and it sucks that it works so well. If you do bother to do any amount of actual research on the Epstein files, you'll find it's more than just Democrats. It's Democrats and it's Republicans. It's a ton of the world's most powerful people that have engaged in some of the most unthinkable evil actions imaginable. And these monsters, these fucking worms, treat it like a joke. CoffeeZilla just made a video on it. Howard Lutnick in particular, he's always busting a gut laughing anytime Epstein's even brought up.
I am increasingly disgusted by the way this is all a big joke to liars like Howard Lutnick, who deceive the American public about the status of his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein.
That guy was there. I wasn't going.
Now he testifies under oath that he actually went to the island of the creep and brought his kids.
We had lunch on the island. That is true, for an hour, and we left with all of my children.
Nevertheless, every time Epstein is brought up, this guy can't stop chuckling. Here's Lutnick laughing again when Trump is addressing a question about Epstein.
To talk about how to respond to the Epstein situation.
I don't know. I could ask you that question.
He thinks it's the funniest thing he's ever heard. And maybe it's because they really think we are buying it. Maybe it's because they think, hey, we're just going to get away with this. We can just keep, the lies are so brazen.
They are literally laughing in your face about it. They know they're getting away with it. They're not even trying to hide it anymore. It's just so brazen, like CoffeeZilla said. And then you have people like Alex Jones that are just parroting that same shit like, everyone's absolved except for the people we don't like. And also, by the way, even if it was only the people you don't like that are implicated here and guilty, why aren't they being arrested? Ask yourself that question. Why aren't the people like Bill Clinton being arrested? Why is nobody getting arrested for the Epstein files? I know I've already said this, but even if the only people that were guilty in here are the people you personally don't like, why wouldn't Trump and this administration be going fucking full throttle, whole hog at them, trying to throw them in the slammer? Food for thought, I suppose. Perhaps it's because they know if they went down, it would put them at risk too, because it's not just the people you don't like. You are just so focused on the ones you don't like that you'll block out all of the other shit. You will not use your own fucking brain. Now, another big thing that's come out that it seems like a lot of mainstream media and a lot of Twitter personalities refuse to speak on is Epstein's potential ties to Israel. It's very weird. Yet no one really seems to want to talk about that connection. Why is that? I just find it odd how you have so many Twitter patriots and mainstream outlets that just outright ignore this potential connection of Epstein and Israel. And Israel is a very important subject in American politics, it seems. Politicians can't stop praising them, glazing them, and Trump in particular, his mouth has become a glory hole for Netanyahu. So don't you think it would be something worth talking about and investigating if there is potentially a tie between Epstein and Israel? I mean, I feel like that would be something that a lot of people would want to know more information about to find out if it's true or not or what's going on there. Because again, every politician in this country, this administration and even previous administrations love to bend over for Israel.
I came into Congress 13 years ago with the stated intention of being the leading defender of Israel in the United States Senate. Right. And I've worked every day to do that.
We need America to wake up and prioritize Israel, and bring home Israelis, and make sure we stand by our number one ally in Israel.
That's right. What cause is dear to your heart?
Cause is dear to my Israel. Defense of Israel.
What is number one?
I have said to people when they ask me if this Capitol crumbled to the ground, the one thing that would remain is our commitment to our aid, and I don't even call it aid, our cooperation with Israel. Because that's fundamental to fundamental.
Miriam Adelson is amazing. What she has done for Israel, for our country, and for this world is second to none. Thank you, my friend. The sad truth is, for way too long, anti-Semitism has been allowed to grow unchecked in this country. Too many institutions have abdicated their moral responsibility to speak up.
There's an additional 100 clips I probably could have pulled, but these were the ones that were top of mind, and I think it's pretty clear that Israel is an extremely important subject to the powerful politicians in this country. Fucking Ted Cruz goes as far as to say it's the sole reason he got into politics is to defend them. I've said it before, I'll say it again. I don't know how that's not treasonous. He is a representative in our country who is openly stating that his priorities are a foreign entity. Whatever, I guess. I suppose that's fine by today's standards. I don't really get how. And boy howdy, isn't that Nancy Pelosi statement quite the eye-opener. Even if everything crumbles over here, we will still find a way to honor our aid to Israel. We'll start botting in RuneScape if that's what it takes to make enough money to send it to Israel. Damn everything else here, that's the most important part. Pretty crazy shit, I would think. I feel like maybe I'm on the crack pipe here, but that should be a little concerning that the politicians that are supposed to be representing this country seem much more focused on the interests of another. But anyway, my point is, with the release of all of these Epstein files, even though hundreds of the files are just completely worthless garbage that are fully fucking redacted, just nothings, there is still a lot that remains that showcases a potential connection of Epstein and Israel. Now, of course, nothing's confirmed or anything, but shouldn't that at least warrant some kind of investigation, at least some kind of poking around? This administration is very blunt about how little they care about the Epstein files. They literally say that. Trump always talks about how no one should care about this and move on. And also, they're very open about, we're probably not going to look to investigate anything. There's nothing actionable in there. Whoops-a-daisy. Can't do anything about it. Sorry. And, of course, Perjury Patel just continues to lie about it. But anyone that actually takes a peek at it should at least find it odd that a lot of these outlets, like journalist outlets, a lot of politicians, and a lot of the paid shills online are not talking about the Epstein-Israel connection in any capacity whatsoever. And when they do talk about Epstein as a potential spy, they always make a mention of CIA, or, maybe not being a CIA spy, but never going as far as to talk about a potential connection to Israel. That should be very weird. Why is that something no one would talk about when Israel is such a huge piece of this country, apparently? Why wouldn't that be something that would be more discussed by the mainstream? It's all so blatantly corrupt. Anyway, just wanted to yap about this latest lie. That's really about it. See ya.